Welcome to Crushgasm, the podcast dedicated to the highs and lows of crushes. From their first to their worst, we're going to cover them all with a cascade of characters, including our guest today, a sucker for a lacy parasol, Paige Lavoie, a vintage loving Halloween enthusiast, author, and occasional TV extra who is here to talk not only about her upcoming cryptid romance book, I'm in Love with a Mothman, but also her crush on one of the biggest baddies in anime, her villain crush, Sesshōmaru from Inuyasha. Paige, how are you?
I am so good. Thank you so much for having me.
Did I get the name right? I probably won't say it ever again.
I think you did.
So, you strike me as someone who has always fallen for fictional characters. You make a detailed list of crushes dating back to preschool of cartoon characters and whatnot. Would I be right about that?
You would be absolutely correct about that. I remember, I don't know that there's ever been a time that I haven't picked out a fictional character and been yep, that's the one. So you got me pegged.
So it's kind of I always think when you watch anything or you read anything, you have to have you say, my boyfriend, my girlfriend, you have to have someone to keep it interesting.
You know, I also think that this is pretty common with people who end up in creative fields, like writers, anything in that sort of, whether you are into fiction or fan fiction, which are, I guess it's the same thing, but everyone sort of watches a show, and I love a good self-insert. I love imagining who I would be in this world, who I would be dating in this world, and I have definitely been doing that since probably elementary school.
Oh, for sure. I wanted to be a Chippette so bad to be with Alvin.
Right? Oh my gosh. Yeah. The movie, did you watch the movie where they they're traveling around in the hot air balloon and there's the gems? Ugh.
The Girls of Rock and Roll, best song ever. I would just rewind over and over that part. It's so good. I used to watch it on Cartoon Network all the time. In the summer, it would come on, and that's where you stumbled upon Inuyasha. It didn't take much for him to land in your heart, though, but was it, instantaneous?
So it was that Toonami sort of era of TV, right, where they had that block of anime at night. And I remember just turning on Cartoon Network, and there was this show, and it was nothing I'd ever seen before. I was a big Sailor Moon fan, and so I was, fairly familiar with some of that more popular anime that we had. But this was so, there was this vintage, old-timey aesthetic. The characters were all different. They had wolf ears, and it was so interesting to me. But it was during that time where you couldn't watch anything on demand. So I would just sort of there was no rhyme and reason. I had no idea when it came on. I would just turn on the TV at night, hoping that it was on. And I would see the same 4 episodes over and over and over. So I'd see that first one where you have that really iconic moment where Inuyasha's pinned to the tree and Kagome gets the arrow out. And I vibed with that. There was a lot of just interesting composition, character moments. And I don't really remember the first time I saw Sesshōmaru on screen, but I believe it was the episode where he's wounded and Rin finds him, which is a very tender moment.
Oh, you're like you said, I forgot the idea that we just couldn't watch whatever we wanted. We kind of had to just watch what was presented to us. People today, kids today don't know the hardships we went through. But you're watching kind of the same thing over and over. So when did you sort of get to know his character a bit more, develop him,
That is such a great question, because I think a lot of that development happened in my head. I would watch these same episodes over and over, and really I was exposed that this is not a character who is kind. This is not a character. He's very much a antagonist in the story, and I was only really seeing the best moments. I was seeing him saved by a small child that he then sort of gets a soft spot for. I'm seeing all these moments. I rewatched the series as an adult, and in the first couple episodes, I'm like, oh, he is so mean. My husband's watching it with me and is like, that's him? That's the guy? And I'm like, it is.
There is something so I don't want to say endearing, but enticing about a bad
Mhm.
boy that
I love a villain.
yeah, like there's like I just talked about Homelander on another podcast from The Boys. Do you watch that show?
I don't
Well,
know.
The Boys is basically shits on, but in a loving way, the Marvel DC universe, and they have their world of superheroes. But it's like, what if these people were like celebrities, but they're really horrible? And Homelander is like the Superman, but
Okay.
a psychopath.
Oh no.
But there's something about his Zach Morris bleached hair, and it's just like, I don't know, there's something about him. My friend's like, how could you like him? And I'm like, I don't know, but everyone needs a bad boy crush,
Mhm.
a villain in
True.
their life. I mean, look
So-
at the Disney villains. They're so popular.
Yeah, and a lot of them are pretty hot. So I guess.
Are you a Jafar girl?
Oh my gosh, I never really thought about it. Probably.
Okay. I know a lot of people like the villain from The Princess and the Frog.
Oh yeah, he's very good looking. Yeah.
He's a handsome guy. But as for Inuyasha, when you got into the show, did you like head to the bookstore, get like the comics and everything? Did you dive that deep, or were you just like,
I should have. It was like going to the local library and seeing what they had. I remember Googling, and they would have these really awful fan translations at that point in time where people would scan in the manga and they wouldn't even overlay it because the photo editing apps, there was just nothing. Like you could do it on Paint, I guess, but it would be, you'd have to look at the whole page and then you'd scroll down and then there'd be text that was some rough translation of what was going on the page. So I don't really think there was a ton of Inuyasha in my bookstore or my library. So there was there was a series like His and Her Circumstances. I got into a lot of like the young adult romance manga, but as far as like more of that action, like adventure genre, I feel like it was lacking.
And we can't forget, this is like, you were sort of in like middle school, and that's when hormones, I always say, they're working overtime. Do you think that had anything to do with your love of this character kind of manifesting a little faster than normal and you like making these stories in your head of him?
I mean, stories in my head, filling up notebooks. Yeah, I do feel like I fell hard for Sesshōmaru around the same time that I also was very into Legolas from Lord of the Rings. So maybe there was just something about that like shiny, flowy hair that got me good. But you know, it could have really been something about that time in your life where you're meeting a character on screen for the first time who is like no one you would ever see in real life, and probably for the best because he's a little murdery. So
hey, everyone needs that kind of crush.
I was reflecting on that today where I thought to myself, you know, in these fan fictions I would write, it was always the thought that I would be the one human or the second human, because he already had Rin, that he would love. And I think about that now. I'm like, I think I would have gotten on his nerves. I think he would have not. Nope.
It wouldn't have been. But is that when you started? Was this the show that kickstarted your fan fiction writing?
Ooh, I think between this and Lord of the Rings, I read a lot of fan fiction that was kind of all over the place, and I think Inuyasha was one of the first big ones. I think between that, Lord of the Rings, and then it kind of spiraled where there was Newsies fan fiction.
Oh, wow.
There was anything that I could self-insert into. I was a character. But yeah, I think that this was one of the major players for sure.
And you mentioned your love of Legolas, and like him and the anime, like they have both of these strong silent types, but they also have the flowing hair. But they're kind of, Legolas isn't a bad guy. So is there any other commonalities you could think of between those two? Because they're total opposites.
I don't think so. I think it was just the hair. They both have pointy ears. I love an elf. Yeah. And there is a gracefulness, now that I'm thinking about it, between both of the characters. And I feel like that ends up translating a bit into my books too, when I'm writing that sort of character who is that strong, silent, mysterious type. There's also a gracefulness to those movements that can be cat-like, maybe those traditionally, what people would think of traditionally feminine movements. I feel like we oftentimes see very, like, those beautiful men described that way, as graceful and elegant, and in a surprising way. And it really shouldn't be, because, like, what even is, femininity, masculinity? I think that there can be such a delicate balance and a line there, but it can be very enticing and attractive when you're seeing that for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, Legolas is, I think, one of the top tier crushes of the early aughts for a generation. It was like, I think 1 in 3 people, men or women, it's like, that was it. You saw that freaking elf, and it's just like that TikTok where it plays the Taylor Swift song and your hair is blowing. It's just, I mean, I was in love with him, but I couldn't make it past the second movie. I fell asleep. My husband's a huge fan though, so we are rewatching, and we're getting to the second one soon. But yeah, I was like, Legolas kind of doesn't have any lines in the first movie. He kind of just has an intense stare that you're just like, yep, that's it. But that's all he needed to do.
That's all he needed.
But unlike Legolas, Sesshōmaru, did I get it? Has some villainous qualities in him that can be, like, attractive to some, but we talked about, like, this with 2 other authors, and you mentioned it too, how when you would write your fan fiction, you're like, could I be the one to be, like, the saving grace of him? It's kind of that, I'll be the one to fix him in many cases. Do you think that's been and will always be the appeal of these types of characters?
I think it really depends. I'm reminded a little bit of, are you familiar at all with the Cruel Prince series?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so we have a character who's just, you meet him, and I knew he was the love interest, and I just thought, he is despicable. Cardan, terrible. And then you meet Jude, and to me, she was very relatable. She is, like, hardcore sword girl, you know what I mean? And instead of it being that sort of I can fix him dynamic, you just kind of see her get a little bit tougher and more ruthless while we are learning more about his softer qualities. And they're both just kind of, like, perfect in their dysfunction for each other. And I feel like we are also seeing a rise in that sort of thing too, where it's like, okay, it's not that I can fix him, it's more that we can sort of be on each other's level. I think that can be really interesting, especially when you're also seeing that softness. I do think that inherently there might be sort of that appeal in seeing, not necessarily fixing the bad guy, but letting him show you that side that no one else gets to see.
Being led into his, like,
yes,
soft
let
spot.
him exactly opening up that soft heart that we know was there all along. And I think that that's always, like, a very interesting dynamic.
And there's also the idea that this character was older than you. I guess in human years, they say he's like 19, 20, and at the time you were middle school, 12, 13. Have you always been someone who kind of looked at the older boy as, like, the one?
I don't know exactly what it is about the Immortal Crush. I have always been drawn to vampires, werewolves, like those monster sort of entities, demons, what have you, which I guess does kind of imply a very large age gap.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's something about when he hits like 500 years old, what. So yeah, I think there's something about the Immortals that have always drawn me in. Not any sort of specific age gap, but I love a good monster romance.
When you say immortal vampires, were you a fan of the Vampire Diaries, the originals, any of that?
I watched a bit of the Vampire Diaries, but I would have it on while I was like painting or crafting. So it was one of those background shows that I didn't get super into. Like, I'm not very knowledgeable about it, but I do remember vaguely thinking that Damon was very cute, and I believe he is the bad boy of the show. So that might say something.
Well, if you need a bad boy that's a vampire, this Klaus from the originals, which is the Vampire Diaries spinoff, is a vampire werewolf hybrid of sorts.
Ooh. Oh my.
And he is like a top, like, he gets mentioned a lot here. Just top-notch crush. You're just like, he takes your breath away, and he has this accent. Oh,
I was very into like the Queen of the Damned and also Underworld. Those two I probably watched when I was too young to watch them, but you know, what can you do? But I remember Celine, and Lestat, yes.
Okay.
Top tier.
Like, everyone has that. You have to have at least, I think, one vampire in your life.
You have to. It's a requirement.
Yes. They have like such a sexuality to them, at least in pop culture. That's how we make them. But were there any of like,
what do you mean in real life? We all know that sexy vampire down the street.
You know, that neighbor I have. He's a hot immortal guy. But were any of your crushes at school like your anime crush, like bad boys, or maybe they had little pointy ears? Maybe they were very silent, cat-like.
Not in particular. I can't really remember too many. I don't think the guys at school like really compared to the fictional vampires and what have you that I was consuming in fiction. But I can't really think of any like big standout crushes. It does remind me a little bit of how in middle school, early high school, I did try to point my ears by just kind of like for minutes at a time, I would pinch my ears together, just hoping that it would add up and I would end up with pointy ears. So lacking in the crushes, but very much vibing in the wanting to have pointy ears, just really wanted to make it happen for myself.
They are very cute. I do like an elf ear as well. But this is like, he is a villain and he comes with a lot of like bite. Like, I was looking at his ability.
Literally.
Like, he has demonic powers, speed. Which of his powers would you have loved to have?
Oh, would I have loved to have? Ooh, interesting. Let's see. I remember him doing some sort of like poison thing. Like, I'm like looking on his Wikipedia right now, scrolling, being like, what power would be incredible? I mean, I know that with his sword, he did that thing where he healed Rin, and that was, I would love to be able to heal people. I know he also, it says here that the accelerated healing, that'd be great if you could like, I feel like I am so clumsy that I would love to like accidentally bang into a cabinet and not have like a weird random bruise on my leg.
That one.
So yeah, I'll take that one. That one.
Good answer. That's a good one. I think that one. Yeah, I'm very clumsy as well.
Like, I also have thyroid problems. I'm like, would that just like fix my thyroid? That would be fine. I wouldn't mind that at all.
Yeah, take that one to save on doctor bills as well.
Right? Exactly.
More like a cost-effective.
Very practical here.
But over the course of the story, I was reading that, you know, this guy, he gets married, he has kids, and I think sometimes it can hurt us to see a crush build a life that is not with us. So were you at all like jealous of Rin and this family he started?
This is no hate to the Rin and Sesshōmaru shippers, because I know that there's a big fandom of them. I didn't quite get it. To me, she was always like a daughter figure to him. So it just was not my thing, was not my pairing. So yeah, I wouldn't say it hurt, but I would say that I was disappointed to let him go. In my head, it will always be I wanted to swoop in and be the stepmom.
Well, now it's time to rewrite the story because I would like to know if, we're going to do a little fan fiction now.
Mhm.
If your middle school wishes could come true, what do you think your lives would be like?
Oh my gosh, if my middle school wishes had come true, yeah, I would be in like basically like a demon queen who was living it up with Sesshōmaru. We'd have our cute adoptive can't talk children, just exploring the world, flying around together. Like I said, I do think in reality he would not have liked me. I think I would, because that strong silent type, great in fiction. In real life, I would be like, hey, so like, what are you thinking about? Are you mad at me? Yeah, I think in ideal Paige middle school daydreams, we would be very, very happy together.
That's good. Well, that's good. You can't write, he won't like you.
I know. Worst fan fiction ever. You get summoned through a portal with your dream guy, and he's like,
let's just be friends.
Just be friends. I think it would be better. It's not you, it's me.
Well, now it's time to talk about some other fictions, but first, I did want to know, has being an author always been at the forefront of what you wanted to do in life?
It has, yeah. I've always been interested in telling stories. I remember when I was in elementary school making a picture book about like hamsters who started a rock band. So there's always just been this interest in drawing, and eventually that led to realizing that writing was really what I was interested in, and such a cool way to be able to kind of live through these different archetypes and stories and characters that I love to hang out with and experience. It's been really fun.
And looking back at Confidence, the Diary of an Invisible Girl, and then looking at I'm in Love with a Mothman, and you have a couple more slated for next year, how do you think you've grown as an author from then to now?
Goodness, Confidence was such a moment in time for me. It was my first book, and I really poured a lot of who I was at the time, the experiences that I've been through. I did a lot of vending at conventions. I used to be a comic artist and a tiny hat maker. So I would be in the artist alley. I would sometimes cosplay. At that point in time, I was trying to do a YouTube channel, and all of that, plus my insecurities and friendships and crushes in high school, all really just poured into that first book. And it's something that I'm really proud of. I've come back to it once in a while thinking like, oh, could I ever do a sequel? Because there's certainly so much from Cassie's perspective that you never really get to see. But I in a way, I think I will always love that story, but it's my first book. So there was a lot to grow from. And it's interesting looking at that book and then looking at what I'm writing right now and seeing how far sort of the style, the subject matter, and all of those things have come. And in a way, I'm still honoring that high school Paige by writing a monster romance. I think that my Sesshōmaru loving heart would be really pleased to read I'm in Love with Mothman and see just kind of where those themes come into play, how they've matured as I've grown. And yeah, they're very, very different books, but I think my teenage self would be really happy with both of them.
And what caused that shift from Confidence to I'm in Love with the Mothman? Like going from this, like kind of one style to this like cryptid romance?
There have been a lot of books that unfortunately the public has not seen between those. So I did try to do a couple sequels for Confidence, and none of them really felt right. And then I've probably written over a dozen of manuscripts between then, some of them unfinished, some of them finished, and just kind of waiting on the back burner. And as I continued to write, the style just sort of continued to evolve with me as I've like grown. And I think that with I'm in love with Mothman, it's different for me because I really thought that I was going to stick in the YA age range. But then during the pandemic, I just wanted to have fun. I was very much stuck at home, getting kind of fed up, getting really like antsy. And I just tweeted this random thing that was, mentally I'm in West Virginia nursing a wounded Mothman back to health. I don't know why I thought about it. I had been thinking a lot about Mothman at that time, just kind of getting kind of fascinated by him. And that tweet sort of spiraled me into, I'm going to try to write an adult paranormal romance. And it was just my fun project. It was something I would work on when I was stressed out, when I was feeling sad, when I was feeling lonely, when I just sort of wanted to escape to a cabin in the woods. And it really became that for me. And it remained really like lighthearted and fun. I like to say it feels like a Hallmark movie for people who love Halloween. So it doesn't take place at Christmas. It's like very autumn. And it still has a lot of those things, like those hallmarks of the stories I tell, where it is very slice of life, very cozy, has a lot of soft moments, but it's also a monster romance. He's a little bit brooding. We've got that banter, that sweet banter, and he also like has red eyes and wings, and aesthetically is just mwah, perfect.
I was gonna ask you, you mentioned tweeting about it that kind of set you on that journey, but there's so many cryptids out there. What made Mothman like the subject of this one? Not Bigfoot, not Nessie, you know?
I mean, Mothman is just kind of the hottest cryptid, in my personal opinion, and I'm sure there are people that would argue with me about that. I feel like he's very much having a moment right now, and I think because there isn't a whole lot of information. There's like a bunch of different sightings of him. We have like kind of this description where some people say he looks more that sort of moth, insect looking, kind of like the statue in West Virginia. But then we get these sightings of him where he looks very owl-like, very dark, like that really wide wingspan with these circular eyes that are just supposed to like bore into your soul. And I think that there was something about that really sort of stuck with me. I found very exciting, and he just kind of very naturally became that romantic lead that I was looking for.
And you said that you wrote when you were, had nothing to do, or even when you were feeling lonely. And I feel like a lot of these cryptids are loner characters. Did that help you kind of connect with the character when you were writing?
Absolutely. So my main character, she's a social media influencer who is feeling incredibly burnt out. And when I started writing this, we were very much in the cottagecore movement on TikTok, where it was everyone being like, I want to move out to a cabin in the middle of nowhere and live my cottagecore fantasy. And that is my main character. She literally wants to ditch her internet life, move to a cozy cabin and unplug and just kind of sink into that slow living. And then we have Mothman, who similarly kind of has to run away from where he has become most popular, most known, and is in hiding from all these cameras and people who want to find him and know more about him. And that's where they meet. And it's two characters who are very different from each other, but also have this thing that's very much similar and that they can relate to each other on.
And the idea of like an influencer falling for Mothman, I'm getting very big. We mentioned Vampire Diaries, like big CW, probably now Netflix because they're taking it over vibes. So if like Netflix came to you and wanted to put this in production, who would you see as your two leads?
I don't know who I would want for my for Heather. I thought about that a ton today. I had some people tagging an Instagrammer who's an actress, and I cannot remember her handle, but apparently the cover art that I have resembles her. So it would be really fun to get someone sort of unknown, first big project. I also would love to find if there could be a mid-sized actress. I think that would be great. Heather's described as being sort of like pear-shaped, thick thighs. Like, I think having that physical description being matched would be something that would be very cool, especially in Hollywood. Let me see. And then I pictured Adam Driver the entire time I was writing. Just a big, handsome man. I also think that, goodness, what is his name? Jamie Campbell Bower. He played Vecna.
Okay.
Oh, he's very handsm. So
do you like him as Vecna though, or when he's out in the makeup?
Yes.
People were thirsting over him as Vecna, so
I get it. I get it. I can fix him, Kendra. I can fix him.
Well, I mean, you'd be like, screw you. What's that, Kate Bush? I'm gonna run to this guy.
Yeah. What? Why are we running out of the Upside Down is my question.
I know. I mean, it's like a whole kingdom down there with you guys. You guys can rule it all, which hopefully,
oh my God.
I mean, one more season.
We'll see what happens.
I think Vecna, well, I personally think Will is the demon that's next.
We'll find out.
Oh, I love fan theories. So.
Me too. I would love for Eddie to come back. Sweet Eddie.
I think we never have seen them come back. The beloved character never come, but I feel like they're gonna do it for him because the fan theories that I've been reading make a lot of sense.
I would love to see it. Talk about okay, that is my favorite thing. We're talking about the bad boy characters. I love a bad boy character who's actually a cinnamon roll. Like, I love the aesthetic, but like that sweet softness, that's, yeah, I love Eddie. That's so there's I'm in Love with Mothman, and then there's our own little underworld, which comes out next June. That has such Eddie Chrissy energy that I wish it was coming out sooner, so I could be like, guys, there's this book and I need you to have it.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, I'm in Love with the Mothman drops December 16th, but then you're working on 2 other ones that are coming out. That's one of them. It's giving us Eddie Chrissy vibes. What's the other?
So the other one is A Girl Called Monster, which is a modern Frankenstein retelling. It has very My Fair Lady influences, just a very dark, yet there's some like also fun slice of lifey stuff in this one, but it deals with a lot heavier themes. This is a villain who is hot, who we do not like. Oh. This is the sort of book where
script.
Yeah, exactly. I think there is I have such love for a dark romance, but this is one where it's not good, and to get her happy ending, she has to run away from that instead of towards it. And I think it is an important thing that a lot of us learn in our early 20s, late teens, even older sometimes, that archetype is not necessarily like fun in fiction, but not good in real life. And we see this Frankenstein monster character getting her happy ending, and she deserves it.
Well, we don't want any spoilers, especially for I'm in Love with the Mothman. So where can we find that and you online?
You can find me at paigelavoie.com. I'm Mrs. Paige Lavoie all across the internet. And I'm in Love with Mothman is available for pre-order on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and I think most other online realtors. Right now it's just the ebook, but there will be a paperback and an audiobook. The paperback will be available for pre-order, and I believe the audiobook is going to come out closer to the release date, if not just shortly after. It's my first audiobook, so I'm like super, super excited.
Did you get to read it?
I didn't. Oh, thank goodness. I cannot wait for a professional to read it. I love like short. That's been my my slogan this time. I'm like, I love this. I love that. I love doing a short, small reading. To sit and read an entire book is such a task, and I am forever grateful and impressed by professional narrators. So I can't wait to see how it turns out, but I'm very thankful that I'm not the one reading it.
So, Paige, I do want to thank you for taking the time to talk to me today about your villain crush. And everyone, you can find all of Paige's information below. And until next time, keep crushing it.